Welcome to another episode of A Shaman in Suburbia. Today I have some of my pets with me. We have another one around here somewhere too. Maybe he'll join us in a moment. So I'd like to introduce you to Rizzuto, the Italian kitty, and Quinn, who is a special little schnauzer dog. And I have my pets here today because I wanted to talk to you a little bit about communicating with animals. I am not a pro at communicating with animals. If you come to my house, you will figure that out pretty quickly. They're behaving very well for me right now. So I read this book a few years ago, though, in this wonderful adventure that I've been having with learning about shamanism and remembering my roots. And I actually gave it away to someone I realized when I looked for it today, so I'm going to show you a picture of it. It's called Kinship with All of Life. And I read it probably about 5 years ago, but it was written in the 50s. And it's written by J. Allen Boone. He calls it a simple, challenging, real-life experiences showing how animals communicate with each other and with people who understand them. So I read this book and it just opened me up to the idea that we can be more harmoniously in communication with all animals, but maybe starting with our pets. The way that he describes his experience of learning to communicate with animals came when he was watching a dog for some friends. He was somehow connected with the movie industry. I think he might have been a writer for maybe scripts. I'm not sure if I have that part right though. You'll have to read the book, it'll let you know for sure. However, he was watching a movie dog, that I know for sure, and so he thought that this would be an easy thing, that he could get this very smart dog who was in many films at the time to do what he wanted him to do while he was in his home for quite some time. He was watching this dog for a number of months. What he found very quickly was that the dog was not having that. So his book is the journey that he had with this movie dog of himself slowing down and really taking the time to listen to what the dog was trying to communicate. And they developed a language together. He then goes on in the book to describe communicating with all sorts of animals, insects, and even talks to, I believe, a microbiologist about communicating with bacteria, which was amazing to me. So I wanted to open up this topic because as shamans, as people exploring shamanism, we are looking at how we can come into harmony with all that lives, right? And I'll tell you a little story. I did apply some of these skills after I read the book. One of them was that at the time I was living in an apartment and I had a little community garden right outside my apartment that I started with my kids and some other neighbors in the area. Well, I kept getting ants, and I was trying to be very natural and not use pesticides and whatever on it. So after reading Kinship with All of Life, I decided I was going to try talking to the ants, and so I did. So I asked him, I said, hey, can you just move somewhere else because you keep infesting our little garden? And it was not good for the garden, but also every time I went to go pick something, I would get stung. And I did it a few times. I just went out, I sat there, and I asked them if they could move. I gave them honor and respect, which I think is a lot of what this is about, honoring them for their presence. And believe it or not, they actually did move. Now, granted, they moved to somebody else's garden plot, so I kind of felt bad about that. But hopefully they were okay with it. And I ended up having a very sweet little garden space for many years that had no ants in it. Oh, and here's little Lenny down here with us too. Lenny's our other dog. He's a little Chihuahua mix. So one other story about this communicating with all of life. I was in an office space with a group for a while, and I knew that it was kind of time to move into my own space, just kind of do my own thing. And again, this was pretty recently after I had read this book. I began to have a real difficult time inside my office with mold. I live in Florida. We have a lot of mold and mildew. but this was excessive. Something had happened in like the air conditioning ducts, and there was water collecting, and mold had developed in my office to the point that it was actually growing on my books and on my artwork on the walls. So I happen to have a pretty strong sensitivity, especially in the past, to mold. So I was having difficulty losing my voice, which was a big part of my work, and just generally feeling bad, have sinus infections and things like that. So this was all curiously during the time that I knew that it was time for me to step out on my own, but I was a little bit scared and afraid to do that. I wasn't sure what the future would hold. So I continued to struggle with the mold. I actually asked if something could be done about it. They began exploring what was going on with it, hadn't come up with any solutions. In the meantime, I started looking for a new space, and nothing was available in my price range. So I had the bright idea to choose to be in harmony with the mold. So every day I would go into my office before I started working, went a little bit early, and I said, I choose to be in harmony with the mold. I walked around my office, I said this many times, and I did it for probably about 2 or maybe even 3 weeks. What I noticed over that period of time was I had less sensitivities to it. I was able to breathe better, the sinus infections were clearing up, I didn't have the same level of laryngitis, which I was to the point of almost not being able to talk before I started choosing harmony with the mold. Meanwhile, I did continue looking for another space. And I had visited this space right at the beginning of this little process of being in harmony with the mold, and it wasn't available. It was the perfect price, perfect location, but there was nothing available. Well, during my experiment, the secretary called me back. She said, you know, the person who had wanted to rent this space has backed out. Are you still interested? I said yes, and I actually moved in the next 2 weeks. I really believe that my choice to be in harmony with the mold not only helped my health during that time, but it also helped for me to open up to a new space coming available. When that happened, I was able to step into what was best for my future. So I just wanted to share this fun little activity with you. Maybe you will choose an animal, maybe one of your own that live with you. Maybe you'll be talking to the ants. Maybe you'll even make friends with a gnat. I don't know. But I hope you have fun exploring the idea of kinship with all of life. And if you're interested, great book. I'm pretty sure they have it on Amazon for sale, by J. Allen Boone. It's a great read. Thanks. Bye.